This LOS is explain the effects of barriers to entry, industry concentration, industry capacity, and market share stability on pricing power and price competition. Describing and analyzing an industry. The concept of barriers to entry refers to the ease with which new competitors can challenge incumbents and can be an important factor in determining the competitive environment of an industry. If new competitors can easily enter the industry is likely to be highly competitive because incumbents that attempt to raise prices will be undercut by the newcomers. As a result, industries with low barriers to entry tend to have low pricing power. Conversely, if incumbents are protected by barriers to entry, they may enjoy a more benign competitive environment that gives them greater pricing power over their competitors because they do not have to worry about being undercut by upstarts. Industry competition is often, although not always, a sign that an industry may have pricing power and rational competition. Industry fragmentation is a much stronger signal, however, that the industry is competitive and pricing power is limited. The effect of industry capacity on pricing is clear. Tight capacity gives participants more pricing power because demand for products or services exceeds supply. Overcapacity leads to price cutting and a highly competitive environment as excess supply chases demand. The analyst should think about not only current capacity conditions, but also future changes in capacity levels, how long it takes for the supply and demand to come into balance, and what effect that process has on industry pricing power and returns. Examining the market share stability of an industry over time is similar to thinking about barriers to entry and the frequency with which new players enter an industry. Stable market shares typically indicate less competitive industries, whereas unstable market shares often indicate highly competitive industries with limited pricing power. So we'll just go through these one by one again. So barriers to entry. High barriers to entry limit new competitors. To determine ease of entry, examine industry composition over time. If the same firms are over time, entry is difficult. Barriers to entry may not imply pricing power if competition exists among the existing firms is intense. Look for undifferentiated products. High barriers to exit could lead to overcapacity. And finally, barriers to entry and competitive environment, they may change over time. A quick practice question to check our understanding. An industry that most likely has both high barriers to entry and high barriers to exit is the A, restaurant industry, B, advertising industry, or C, automobile industry. I think that question is not so difficult. C is correct. For the automobile industry, the high capacity requirements and other elements mentioned in the reading provide high barriers to entry, and recognition that auto factories are generally only of use for the manufacturing of cars implies a high barrier to exit. Industry concentration. High industry concentration does not necessarily imply pricing power. Absolute market share may not matter as much as relative market share, having larger share than the next largest competitor. In a low industry concentration, market fragmentation usually results in strong competition and little pricing power. Industry capacity. Undercapacity, where demand exceeds supply, often implies pricing power. Overcapacity can lead to strong price competition, especially when barriers to exit are high. Capacity is fixed in the short run and variable in the long run. Producers may overshoot future required capacity, especially in cyclical markets. A quick practice question to check our understanding. Which of the following companies most likely has the greatest ability to quickly increase its capacity? A, restaurant, B, steel producer, or C, legal services provider? Okay, C is correct. Capacity increases in providing legal services would not involve several factors that would be important to the other two industries, including the need for substantial fixed capital investments, or in the case of a restaurant, outfitting, rental, or purchase space. These requirements would tend to slow down, respectively, steel production and restaurant expansion. I think that question was pretty easy, pretty common sense actually. Finally, we're getting down to almost the end of this LOS. We're going to look now at market share stability. And highly variable market share suggests competitive industry, firms with little pricing power. Stable market share suggests less intense competition, and high switching costs contribute to market share stability. And one last quick practice question to finish this LOS. Which factor is most likely associated with stable market share? A, low switching costs, B, low barriers to entry, or C, slow pace of product innovation? Okay, this question shouldn't be too difficult. C was correct. A slow pace of product innovation often means that customers prefer to stay with suppliers they know, implying stable market share. So this was most likely, so we're looking for the true. Most likely with stable market share. Low switching costs? No, that's false. If there's low switching costs, you're going to have more unstable market share. Low barriers to entry? No, that's the false. Again, it's going to be unstable market share with low barriers to entry. But if there's a slow pace of product innovation, you're probably going to see a more stable market share. And that's the last slide for this LOS. Thank you.